Most people spend their entire lives chasing money, yet almost nobody ever stops to ask how money actually works. Not the version you hear in school, not the motivational quotes, not the advice that tells you to just work harder. I'm talking about the real system, the invisible one that quietly decides who feels trapped and who feels free. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. If you don't understand how money moves, you will always feel like you're behind, even when you're doing everything right, because the game was never designed to reward effort alone. Let me start with a simple question. What is money? Most people answer with something like, it's a medium of exchange, a store of value, a way to buy things. All of that is technically correct and completely misses the point. Money is not value. Money is trust. That's it. Every bill in your wallet, every number in your bank account exists because people collectively agree it has value. There is nothing special about the paper. There is nothing magical about the digits on a screen. The moment the trust breaks, the value disappears. And here's where things get interesting. When you get paid, you're not receiving wealth. You're receiving a promise, a claim on future goods and services that only works as long as the system continues to function. That's why people can earn more than ever and still feel anxious. They're surrounded by money, but they don't control the system behind it. Now let's talk about something most people never realize until it's too late. The majority of money in circulation isn't printed. It's created as debt. When you deposit money in a bank, the bank doesn't lock it away in a vault with your name on it. It lends most of it out. And when it does, it creates new money digitally. This is how modern banking works. A loan isn't just moving money, it's creating money with interest attached. And that detail changes everything. Because if a system creates $1 million in loans at interest, it has created a requirement for more than $1 million to exist in the future. Where does the extra come from? More loans, more debt. The system needs expansion to survive. That's why stability is fragile. That's why growth is mandatory. That's why recessions feel so violent. Debt isn't a side effect. It's the engine, and most people are taught to use that engine in the worst possible way. Think about how debt is marketed. Buy now, pay later, low monthly payments, no interest for the first year. Debt lets you experience a future lifestyle before you've earned it. It feels empowering, but it quietly removes your flexibility. When you owe money, your options shrink, you can't take risks, you can't slow down, you can't easily walk away from a job you hate. Not because you're weak, but because the system has leverage over you. And here's the part that's rarely said out loud. People burdened with debt are predictable. They show up. They comply. They don't disrupt the system that feeds them just enough to survive. This isn't accidental. The system doesn't need you rich. It needs you dependable. Now let's flip the perspective. People who truly understand money don't avoid debt. They use it differently. When most people borrow, they borrow to consume. Cars, vacations, lifestyle upgrades. Their debt increases, but their productive assets don't. When financially literate people borrow, they borrow to acquire assets, businesses, cash-flowing property, investments that grow faster than the cost of the debt. Same tool, opposite outcome. That's why two people can use debt and end up in completely different lives. One feels trapped, the other feels leveraged. This brings us to one of the biggest illusions people fall for: passive income. The internet sells it as effortless. Set it up once, then relax forever. That version almost never exists. Real financial independence is not zero effort. It's optional effort. It's the ability to choose where your time goes. Most people who achieve it don't rely on one income stream. They build systems that blend growth, cash flow, and flexibility. They understand that selling small pieces of an appreciating asset is not failure, it's strategy. They understand that cash flow isn't free, it requires maintenance. And they understand something far more important than returns: spending. Here's a mental model that changes everything. Every dollar you spend requires capital to support it forever. If your lifestyle costs $40,000 a year, you don't just need income. You need assets capable of producing or sustaining that income indefinitely. That coffee habit isn't just $5. It's thousands in required capital over a lifetime. That car payment isn't just a monthly bill. It's years of future labor you've already committed. This is why people with high incomes still feel broke. They solved the earning problem, but ignored the spending problem. And the system encourages this. It pushes status, comparison, lifestyle inflation, not because it hates you, but because consumption keeps the machine running. The people who break free do something boring and powerful. They freeze their lifestyle. They don't chase every upgrade. They don't need to prove anything. They quietly increase the gap between what they earn and what they spend. That gap is freedom, not someday, right now, because even partial independence changes how you think. When a portion of your expenses is covered without active work, fear loosens its grip. You negotiate better. You walk away sooner. You stop tolerating things that drain you. This is why financial independence is more psychological than mathematical. And it's also why many people who reach it feel lost. When the alarm clock stops, the identity tied to struggle disappears. Money solves problem, but it doesn't give meaning. People who thrive long-term don't retire from life. They retire from obligation. They keep building, teaching, creating on their terms. So here's the real takeaway. You don't need to escape the system. That's a fantasy. You need to understand it well enough to stop being controlled by it. You need to stop using money only for consumption and start using it for leverage. You need to design a life first, then build assets to support it. Because the goal was never to do nothing. The goal was to choose. And once you understand how the game actually works, you finally get that option. If this shifted the way you think about money, stay with this channel. We don't chase hype here. We break systems down until they make sense. And once you see them clearly, you stop playing blind. Thanks for watching.